Hello everyone. So an editorial named Re-establishing ownership of the Mandal space, the hegemony of Hindutva has not necessarily meant that Mandal politics is on its last legs. Now this editorial is very relevant for a paper 2. We have three major segments called politics and society, caste system and social movements. Now within politics and society, the interrelationship between modern politics and caste system is a recurrent theme. Then within caste system, how caste is evolving with modernity is a recurrent theme. Now also within social movements, um, there's a segment on backward class movement and Dalit movement. So we have fodder from here as well. Mandal politics is a very significant backward class movement that can be taken up. Now, to point out, there are two specific questions that have come up during previous year. There was one write short note on caste mobilization in North India. Now, caste mobilization in North India is very specific to the Mandal politics that started and how the dominant caste groups within backward caste have kind of emerged as the political elite in the northern India. That is one aspect. Then there was another question on write short note on caste and Indian polity. So caste in Indian polity is primarily in the modern political system that the question has been asked. So what is the relationship between modern politics and caste system? So for that, a very important thinker, that is Rajni Kothari, one could think of. Now he talks about the relationship between modern caste system, modern politics and the caste system. So he's trying to understand how politics is changing the whole fabric of the caste system. So there are two processes that are going on simultaneously. On one hand, you have politicization of the caste system, which means that the caste system is getting politicized. Within caste groups, there is an element of politics. And then there is also casteism of politics. So within political structures, caste systems have played a recurrent role in order to win the electoral game. Now he says that politics is basically a competitive enterprise, which means that the political structure and the political parties, their purpose is to acquire power in order to realize certain kind of goal. And how do they do that? They basically try and identify and manipulate existing allegiances, and they try to mobilize and consolidate their own positions. So there are certain interest groups, there are certain identity politics that happens, and through that they mobilize the masses depending upon the region. So a lot of calculation is done, a lot of tactics is done within a particular region. They would identify specific groups, and they would co-opt ideologies. They would also assimilate. Right, they would also assimilate with different political groupings. There would be coalition politics. A lot of things happen. Why? Because the whole agenda is to, acquire power and realize their goal, which comes through the manifesto. This happens everywhere. It is not very specific to India. It happens in the West. It happens in India. It happens throughout the world. So within modern democracy, which we are trying to refer, politics is basically a competitive enterprise. And even if you look at in the US, the whole political system and the political parties are divided into two factions. One, you have the Democrats, and on the other hand, you have the Republicans. So the Democrats, on the superficial, they seem to be very inclusive. They would talk about immigrants. They would encourage blacks and women and gender rights. Whereas the Republicans, on the prima facie, they seem to support the capitalists and the religious organizations. So what happens, there is the clash of ideology, and they mobilize people according to according to their own agenda. But what is the entire purpose? The entire purpose is to acquire power. And once they acquire power, you also see there are changes in terms of ideology. There are certain issues that they would take up, and it seems like it's a contradiction to what their original ideology is. That's what politics is all about. So Rajni Kothari says that politics in India, it mobilizes caste groups and identity in order to organize their power. And as it does, it changes the form of the organization and also the form of the caste system. So politics changes caste and caste changes politics. But the whole idea is that there is a base, and there is a base, for instance, the identity politics or interest groups through which politics functions. And everywhere there is that base. And you also have nowadays you have modern political systems also coming up. For example, the green politics, green party, they do not ascertain to specific group. Rather, they would they talk about issues which are global, environment, but still they have a basic ground. You within politics, you have to fight for a particular agenda. You have to portray a particular ideology in order to win the elections, and that's how you mobilize the people. That is one relationship that we saw between caste and politics and Indian society and the whole caste system. Now, moving on to this particular editorial. Now, Mandal politics is basically a backward caste or backward class movement. And it started in the 1980s. And there was a split in the 1980s, which we'd read in the editorial. But what are backward classes? Basically, these are the middle caste groups who are referred as backward class or backward caste. So the middle caste groups, they mobilize, and there are obviously a lot of divisions and factions within the middle caste groups. So depending upon the region, there is assimilation and there is also faction differences and conflict depending upon the region. Now, within North India, it is seen that the backward class mobilization is predominantly the Mandal politics, and it was more of a mobilization and not of a movement. Why? Because what we see in southern India, especially in west also, like Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu, what we see in these regions is that the Dvija is only the Brahmins, and the Kshatriya and the Vaishya groups are missing. A sizable number is missing for them. So what happens, there is a easier polarization between the Brahmins and the non-Brahmins. So that is why we see that in the southern India, you have non-Brahmin movement. So there is a clear protest against the caste system in the southern India. That is one thing that I wanted to share. Now, moving on to this particular editorial, what the author says, and it will give you, it will help you contextualize what is backward class movement and how politics functions and how there is co-optation of ideology. Right, as I was talking about, once the political parties in power in West or anywhere, there is obviously a shift in their ideology in terms of the issues that they undertake. They are not fixated, but yes, while mobilizing, they also co-opt certain ideology. They assimilate. They also wither away from original ideology, and it keeps on changing. So politics is change. Politics is dynamic. It does not remain static. Right. The political parties also evolve in terms of ideology and their basic, conditioning.